Okay, so welcome to today's masterclass, which is about frameworks. The framework is the thing that sets the foundation and vision of your work. So what you can have is either a theoretical framework or a conceptual framework. You cannot have both. So a theoretical framework is the theory or sometimes theories that you use to understand your topic that you have taken from someone else. Let's say you have decided you like Pierre Bourdieu's theory the way it is, and it is appropriate for what you want to use. So then you've got a Bourdieusian theoretical framework. You can also have a theoretical framework with more than one theory if you use both theories in their entirety and they just complement each other. So then it's still a theoretical framework. A conceptual framework, on the other hand, is when you take some concepts from different theories and you construct them together into a framework specific for your study. So you are talking about how these different theoretical concepts are actually connected, how they make sense and what their relationships to each other are in your specific study. So you've constructed a theory for your study, and that is a conceptual framework. You shouldn't have more than one framework in your thesis. You can have 2 or 3 theories in your framework, but you should only have one framework because, as you see on my next slide, why do they matter? They are there because they are the foundation of your research. And so if you have 3 different frameworks, you have 3 different foundations for one house. And that doesn't make sense, right? A house has only one foundation. You can have, however, 3 theories that you are using together in your framework. That's fine, but you can't have separate ones. The framework presents the structure and vision for your study and explains the theories and concepts you will be exploring in your study, what you believe they mean when you use a certain term, what does it mean, and how you will use them to analyze your data. So the framework influences all the things in the thesis because it influences, for example, the research design. If you've got a specific type of framework, you are looking for specific types of data, you're going to design your study in a specific way. Also influences the data analysis because it talks about the concepts you will look for and how you will analyze them. It ensures that your study has rigor because it is built on a strong foundation and also because it links your study to broader discussions in the field. So you're building on that existing knowledge in your area, perhaps by using a framework no one has used before to explore a topic, or maybe by using the same framework someone else has used, but to look at it from a new perspective in a new context or something like that. So let me give you an example. So a framework's purpose is to talk about the phenomenon you're interested in. And in your study, you are going to look at this phenomenon, describe it, and analyze it, and explain what that means for others. So imagine I'm here and I tell you, I have bought myself a new dog, and I give you no further details. In your head, you have a picture of my new dog, right? My dog could be like any of these pictures on the screen, right? Or any other type of dog. You don't know if it has, what color hair it has, what color eyes it has, what type of ears it have, because I haven't explained it to you. The framework's purpose is to explain those concepts so that when I say dog, you know what I mean by dog. And in your study, let's say you use the term identity. Identity has so many different definitions, depending on who you ask. You actually have to tell me how you understand identity, right? So this is the purpose of the framework. It is to explain the theories and concepts that you are going to use in your study, what they mean, how you understand them, and how they are relevant for your particular topic that you are investigating. What's the difference between theory and theories and a framework? So a framework is the overarching structure of the project, the underlying framework of your house of research. You've got a foundation. This is your framework. The theories that you use / concepts, if it's a conceptual framework, are the individual parts of the foundation. You know, they have like a hole that they've dug, and then they've poured the cement in, and then they've made little shapes for the big poles that are going to come in, right? Each of those things is the theory or concept that together shape your framework, which is the foundation of your study. So how then did you come up with a framework for your study? So firstly, it's important to understand your research objectives. What exactly are you trying to understand? Then go and look through the literature. Identify the frameworks that they've used. There are likely many frameworks that have been used in your field. Some may be used more often than others, but all of them could be potentially valuable to you. Or you may find that none of them are valuable to you and you would like to use a theory from a different field. So to begin with, you need to be familiar with the literature to be able to do that. Then think about the alignment between the theory and with what you are aiming to do with your research objectives, right? And also with your paradigm, because some theories are very positivistic. They are very prescriptive. There's a right and wrong answer sort of thing. And if you, for example, have a paradigm that's all about meaning making and understanding of different experiences, then something like that would not align together. Also think about whether it would be appropriate for the types of methods you want to use. So if you're going to want to use semi-structured interviews, you don't want a framework that is like that positivistic a right and wrong answer framework I was mentioning before, because they don't align. Also, you need to look for flexibility, because at the start of your study, it's not like you're going to know the answer, right, that your participants are going to give you, for example. You have a general idea of where the study is going, but it depends, of course, on what your participants will tell you. And so you need to have a framework that will allow some flexibility depending on where you are doing your research. So maybe you can adapt it a bit to the context with the local theory brought in. Perhaps it needs to be a bit more flexible so that when your participants say something that doesn't fit in the framework, you can add to the framework, things like that. And the other thing to think about is your ability to make a contribution. So for example, if everyone in your field just always uses Foucault's theory, maybe the contribution you can make is to use a different theory, right? To see something from a different perspective. If, for example, you are using a theory that's quite commonly used, but you're using it in a particular context where it's not been used before, then you can make a contribution on how that has actually added value for others. So think about how you can actually contribute more knowledge to the field through your use of the framework. Now, there are many frameworks out there. These are the ones that are most commonly used in our faculty, but you do not have to use these. You can also use local theories that are not, very famous Western ones like Bourdieu and Foucault and Bronfenbrenner at the top there. The idea is to think about the theory that is most appropriate for your study, because remember, it's setting the foundation by explaining the theories or concepts you are going to use. So Bourdieu's theory of practice and Foucault's theories on power, discourse, and knowledge are very popular in our faculty, as well as Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, which is the micro, meso, macro, chrono system theory, and the cultural historical theory, so Vygotsky's work, or the cultural historical activity theory, which is an expansion of Vygotsky's work. Some people also use different theories of learning. So, for example, communities of practice, experiential learning, or many of the other theories of learning that's out there. People who work on particular types of research would use things like performativity or embodiment quite often. So, for example, those who are doing research in gender, those who are doing research in arts, theater-based teaching, things like that would use gender performativity or embodiment. Epistemic injustice and intersectionality are pretty popular in our faculty. Then there's new literacies theory or digital literacies, or more recently AI literacy. And then TPAC, which is technological pedagogical content knowledge, which is quite popular for those looking at how technology can be integrated in classrooms. But as I said, there are many, many more out there. So go and look at the literature and see what is used in your particular field. There's also things that may be useful in other fields. So if you are, for example, an interdisciplinary scholar and you know about a theory that's frequently used, I don't know, in business and economics, but that you think would be appropriate to your study, you can also use it. You just, whatever one you choose, you just have to explain why that is the most appropriate theory for your study. This is likely how the writing of your theoretical framework will look. So you will see that there are lots and lots of references that are basically the same reference. In this case, this is communities of practice. So Wenger Trainer is the communities of practice people. So because of that, Wenger Trainer and Wenger Trainer are shown everywhere. It is very likely you will reference the same person a lot of times because you're using their theory. But remember that what is important is to say, this is the concept, this is what the concept means, this is how the concept has been used in my study. And this paragraph here is a good example of that because it talks about there's 3 parts of this theory: domain, community, and practice. Domain means this. In this study, domain was, and then we continue on. These are the things that need to be articulated in your writing, because it's not just a textbook description of whichever theory you have used. It is an explanation of how the theory is important for your study. So sometimes a bigger theory may actually be too big for a particular study. So let's say you're writing a paper and it's not really possible to use all of Bourdieu's theory of practice and you focus only on doxa. Or you are focused only on psychological capital, not on all of Tomlinson's capitals. Or you just focus on exclusion and silencing instead of all of epistemic injustice. It is possible to also focus on a small theory depending on the type of research that you are doing and what you're trying to get out of it. So the other thing that's important to realize is that your context matters. So the theories we mentioned before, many of them are quite westernized, and that means that they may or may not suit the context that you're going to do your research in, right? So you need to do a context analysis and decide whether this is appropriate. Maybe it is appropriate, but you need to slightly adapt it. You need to use different terms that are more appropriate in the context, or you need to add some particular extra thing that is valuable in that context. The idea is to not just apply someone else's theory into a new context. The idea is to create a theory that will help you actually understand your own content. And so this means engaging with local knowledge and leveraging the insights that you have, perhaps as a local person, or that your participants may have, to help you understand the context better. Because your frameworks need to be sensitive to context, and they may or may not be in their current form, and you need to think whether that means they need to be adapted in some way in order to better suit the context that you are doing your study in. So in terms of reading, it's important to go and look and see what other people have done. So look for explicit mentions of frameworks. There may be a section in the paper called theoretical framework. This study is grounded in this theory, which is very easy to identify. I will highlight to you, it's not always that obvious. Sometimes these theories are more implicit in papers, and this is predominantly because of the word limits of papers. Researchers often have to cut separate sections out and just interweave it in their writing. So then you need to look for explicit mentions of technical terms. So for example, if they keep using microsystem, mesosystem, macrosystem, it seems likely that they are using Bronfenbrenner's theory, right? So look at concepts that they keep using. Look at the research questions, because the research questions should include words from the theoretical framework being used. Look at the references. If they have 7 references to Foucault in the reference list, they're probably using Foucault's work, right? So that can also help you identify the theory that they are using. But sometimes it's just not explicitly stated at all, and you just have to figure it out based on the key concepts they use. And sometimes you can't figure it out. The other problem is the term paradigm and the term framework are also just English words, right? They mean specific things in research contexts, but they also can just be used as some general English words to talk about things. So if you see a sentence that uses the word framework, that doesn't mean that whatever's in that framework sentence is their framework. They may just have been using the English meaning of framework more generally. So you want to make sure to very carefully read the way in which they talk about things in the paper when you are trying to identify the frameworks being used. Okay, so the last thing to realize is that, as with all other things in your thesis, they should link together, right? Just like your research questions form the golden thread of your thesis that is listed all the way through, and your answers are there for your questions and your findings and all these things. Your framework and your paradigm are interwoven throughout. You need to make the connection clear for people. Explain how this helps you explore those particular concepts that are mentioned in the framework section. So it's making the links explicit, and that's important in your writing.